Hello Infiniteers, welcome back to Disneyland. We are in my toy box for Peter Pan's Flight for the final time today, and in this episode I'm going to show you how to implement the logic for the flying game. If you remember the playthrough for this ride back in episode 65, when the player arrives in this toy box, they board the flying pirate ship and they follow Tinkerbell through a series of floating rings that will take them to Neverland. And that's what we're going to implement today. Now, as we come into Spark mode, I've already placed some Creativitoys that we're going to need. We're going to need 2 buttons. We're going to need a vehicle summoner, and this is out of the Gameplay Toys drawer, and notice the way that's facing. And we'll also need a logic gate. And we'll need a path as well, but I'm going to drop that in a moment. Now, ideally, you're going to want to use the vehicle power disc for Captain Hook's ship, shown here. This is the flying vehicle from the actual ride in Disneyland, and when you're flying this vehicle, you're going to get to listen to some special music from the Peter Pan cartoon. So this is the ideal flying vehicle. If you do not have this power disc, then I would recommend using the enchanted bed from the movie Bedknobs and Broomsticks. You can unlock that through the toy store, and I think that flying vehicle would be the best alternative for this setting here. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be building the Small World ride next, and for that, you're going to need these 2 power discs. The Small World power disc, shown on the left, gives you the terrain theme and 9 special building pieces that you get from the customizable plant clusters. The Skies of the World power disc, shown on the right, gives you the Sky Dome for the ride and the Small World music. And if you want to build the Small World ride, there really is no substitute for these power discs. You need the terrain and plant themes, and let's face it, the Small World ride just isn't the same without the classic theme music. But for today, let's start building the flying game for Peter Pan's Flight. So I've got the Creativitoys there, most of them. Let's come out of the editor, and I'm going to place my power disc for Captain Hook's ship on the base, and that loads that into the toy box. And you'll notice when I open the editor again, look at the memory meter on the right, the graphics memory is almost pegged. I've still got some memory though, even with that vehicle in here. That's the second memory meter there on the right. Alright, so let's go ahead and hook this up. For the properties on the vehicle summoner, we're going to leave the generated vehicle options all set the way they are. There's no changes we need to make there because we're not actually attaching the vehicle to a path. For the button, we're going to do a new logic connection when pressed. We'll come over to our vehicle summoner, and under the hexagonal power discs, we'll select Captain Hook's ship. If you're on the PC and you don't have power discs, I'm not quite sure where you're going to find that, so you'll have to look through those categories to find that. And we'll hook this button up to remove the ship. So when pressed, come over here, go down to the bottom and remove all. That's just so when the player flies back here to return to Fantasyland, you can take the vehicles out, and that'll work just fine. Alright, so that gets you your flying vehicle. Now, for the rings. You could place the ring collectibles directly in the toy box, but I'm going to use the Path Creator because that gives you a neat sparkle trail that looks like Tinkerbell is flying with you, and I really like how that looks. And I was hoping this would also provide a separate set of rings for each player, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way, and that might be because we're not building a full race out of this checkpoint path. But before we put down the Path Creator, you want to make sure you have moved all of the Creativitoys below the terrain from the previous episode, and make sure you don't have any other toys left that you want to add to this toy box or move. The path needs to be the last thing you do in this toy box, because this is going to be a really long path And once we place the path, it's going to cause a lot of lag in the editor, and it will most likely peg the activity meter, which means the editor is going to make it very difficult for you to add or move any more toys. And so you want to make sure you've got everything done before you do this next step, okay? And you might even save your toy box at this point. But when you're all ready, we're going to come up to the Creativitoys and select the Path Creator. We want to put this at the same level as the floor. And we're going to drag this out to about this point. Just to give you an idea of how far. It's basically about as far out, maybe a little bit more than the width of the floor block that the room is on there. We're going to drop that down, and hopefully that puts you in point collection mode. If it doesn't, just delete the path and drop it again. Alright, the first path point, we're going to come out again about the same amount of distance, maybe a little further, and we're going to come over to the right, just off the end of the platform over there. We'll drop our first path point there. And then we'll come out this way, and if you don't get these exact, that's fine. This doesn't have to be precise. Alright, so I've got 3 points now, the original path, and I've dropped 2 more points. They're all at the same level. The next point, we're going to drop over here, across from the original path point over there, and we're going to drop it down a little bit. And we're going to start descending down toward the island. And you can kind of look back over your path just to make sure it's not going in any weird directions. Alright, and then we're going to start moving over toward the island. Come down a little bit. Kind of look at where we've been. Drop that next path point. Heading over towards the island and Hook's ship. Drop down a little bit more. Kind of look at where we are and where we've been. Coming down a little bit further. And again, you don't get this exact, don't worry about it. As long as you're in the ballpark, you're going to be just fine. And the next one, we're going to drop down just above these trees over here. About like that. So we're going to fly right by the pirate ship. And we're going to head over toward Mermaid Lagoon. And we'll just kind of see where we're at. We'll drop this down just a little bit further. This one we'll leave at the same level. We'll put that about here. The next one is going to go up above the corner of the island over here. We're going to start going up a little bit because we want to fly over Pan's hideout over there. So I'm going to come back about like this. We'll go up a little bit more. This one we're going to drop down about right here. And the next one we'll put right over here by Pan's hideout. Because we want to give the player kind of a tour of the island here. Alright, for the next one, come out over here near the Indian village, and we're going to drop this down a little bit. Not too far, because we don't want the player to hit that mountain there. And then we'll come over here, above these trees, about like this. We're going to start dropping down. And our last path point, we're going to put right about here, right down this way, where they can look right at Peter Pan. So about like that. And we'll exit. And you can notice now the activity meter is pegged there. and I have a lot of lag. It's not moving real smooth here. So this is why this is the very last step that you do. And you want to try to get your points where you want them, because you're probably not going to be able to adjust them at this point. So that's why I look back over the path to make sure it's kind of in a nice smooth curve and so on. And this will start out by placing this little point out here. It kind of moves the path out in that direction. Because if you don't put this point, and you just got that one, or you put this one here a little further over this way, the path will actually take off in that direction. And you don't really want that. Alright, let's set the path properties. So on the path properties, we're going to leave that on. We're going to turn off auto start objects when connected, because we don't really need that. For the visual effect on the checkpoint path, we're going to set that to sparkle trail. And you'll notice this isn't very responsive. The menu is very slow. I have a lot of lag in here. For the default path checkpoint display, we're going to change this to be a blue challenge ring. And that's it for the properties on the path. Okay. All right. Now, in order for that to work, we need to turn on checkpoint path tracking, and we only want to do that one time. That's why we have the logic gate up there, and I placed it up there ahead of time out of the way, because if you put it down here, with all the lag and the activity meter being pegged, there is no way I'm going to be able to move that logic gate. So you want to put it in its final spot before we create that path. But on this button, we'll do a new logic connection. When pressed, come up to our logic gate and input. On the logic gate, new logic connection. On output, come over to our path. And we're going to start checkpoint path tracking. And on the path, a new logic connection. When checkpoint path tracking is started, we're going to come back up to our logic gate and close it. And that will ensure that the path tracking only happens once. And then we'll come over to this button. We can use this when pressed to turn off checkpoint path tracking at the end, when the player is done with the toy box and they're getting ready to leave. And if you want, you can also have this button reopen that logic gate. And this will allow you to reset if the player wants to fly this again. So we'll open up the path. There we go. I believe that is everything. It's pretty easy. So the way this works, come out of the editor here. Excuse me. It's kind of cold and rainy here today, so my asthma is acting up. Sorry about that. But the way this works is the player comes in, they push the button, they get their ship, they take off, okay? And the ring will appear out there when you push the button. If you have a second player, once the first player takes off, the second player pushes the button, gets their ship, and then they can hop in and follow the other player. And unfortunately, they don't get their own separate sets of rings, but they can fly along the path together, and maybe they can even race each other to see who gets to the next ring first. But that's all there really is to the flying game. As I said, it's very easy to implement, and in fact, it's so easy that I did not bother creating logic diagrams for this episode because you don't really need them. But at this point, you can save your toy box, and you're all finished with this ride. Next time, I'm going to visit my updated Small World ride and take you on a quick tour of the latest version of that toy box. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this toy box and my build videos for it. If so, please let me know in the comments. You can get a lot of mileage out of this one because you can use it not only for Peter Pan's flight, but also for any adventures that you want to make in Neverland. And by the way, you can also retheme this and use it for any kind of island adventure that you want to make. The Bowtie Guy did that for his Good Dinosaur themed toy box, Spot on the Loose. And you could also change the sky to an outer space sky and use this island as the basis for a Treasure Planet toy box, for example, or whatever you want. This toy box design works for all kinds of settings, and I'm sure you can probably come up with your own ideas for retheming this. That's all for me today. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe for more Disney Infinity toy boxes like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.